a huge warm welcome today to my guest, Suzy Stanton, who I'm really excited to talk to today about adoption. But first, let me introduce you to Suzy. Suzy is a copywriter and the creator and editor of We Made a Wish digital adoption and parenting magazine. She's a mum via adoption to two beautiful sisters, and the magazine is the resource that she wished she had been available when she started her adoption journey, as she struggled to find many blogs, articles, books written by adopters sharing their experience of the process. Suzy is based in the northeast of England, and she lives with her husband and two daughters who grew in her heart, not her belly. She's a redhead like me, came fifth in the world in sports acrobatics, not like me, and loves a cup of tea and a good book. So I just know this is going to be a fantastic chat today. So please let's welcome Suzy to the podcast. How are you doing today?
All right, thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. Thank you for coming on. So can you take us back to the beginning? What led you and your husband to adoption?
Basically, infertility is the reason, one of the reasons why we'd been trying to get pregnant for quite a while. It didn't happen. We went for an appointment at the hospital to explore fertility treatment. And we both knew then that just was not the way that we wanted to go. The appointment, It just felt like I was on a conveyor belt of people kind of, if you're going to tick the box, you can carry on. If you're not, it just felt wrong. But adoption has always been on our radar. My professional kind of background is law. I was a legal advisor in magistrates court for many, many years. And I managed all of the care and adoption cases in my courthouse. So I was aware of adoption. It's always something that I'd kind of thought about. But once we knew that we weren't going to have a child, naturally, it just felt like the right thing to do for us. And that's the way we wanted to create our family.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? That actually your life involvement in different things like the law and things like that actually led you to how you were then going to build your family. I think that's a really nice way to kind of be eased into it, because I guess you went into it having lots of knowledge beforehand. So you weren't coming into it completely fresh. I'm not saying that that's going to change the experience you had, because I guess everyone's experience is completely different. What were some of the biggest surprises or challenges that you found in your adoption journey?
First time round, I have to say I really enjoyed it. It was basically, you have two parts of the assessment process. You do things like background checks, medicals, making sure that you're fit and healthy. But then the second part is the home study, and it's basically where your allocated social worker comes out to your house and basically you talk about your life, you talk about everything. And I found that really kind of therapeutic in a way. Learned loads about my husband that I didn't know about.
Oh, wow.
Because it's the kind of thing you don't sit down and say, so what did you do when you were 7? Or what was your school like? You know what I mean? It's not, you don't. But during the process, that's the kind of conversations that we had to have. And I really enjoyed that part. And it really cemented for me and my husband that we were doing the right thing. So the first time round, the process, we were assessed and then approved within about 10 months. But then we had to wait. It was 10 months after that before we found out about our daughter, because you're approved and then social workers look for a child or children, depending on who you're kind of, whether you're looking for one or two children. And it sounds awful talking about whether you're looking for one or two children, but that's the nature of the process.
Yeah.
And it was 10 months for us. And I have to say that was the most difficult part, because we didn't know when it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, but we didn't know when, and just couldn't plan for anything. And it felt like total limbo. I suppose when you're pregnant, you know, there's an end date. But for us, it took 9 months. So first time round, it was quite a enjoyable process. But second time, basically, our daughter came home, and then about 10 months after that, birth mum got pregnant again. We were asked if we wanted to be assessed again, and we said it's too soon, not the right time. And, I will always feel really guilty about that, because we'd said no. but it wasn't the right time. But then 3 years later, she got pregnant again, and it felt like the right thing to do. So our daughter was desperate to be an older sister, so it kind of just felt the right time. But that experience of the assessment was awful, because the local authority that we went with were really underfunded, really stretched, and we had an agency social worker, so she'd never done an adoption assessment before, and we were kind of saying to her,
Right.
I think we need to do this bit next.
No.
What about this? Have you done this? And it was all because we'd been told baby was going to come home to us in the October, and it was all kind of, it was just very stressful. So it was two very different kind of adoption experiences. But, means to an end, and we got through it. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you don't even think about the fact that could happen with like the birth mom having another child, and then you getting offered that opportunity. And then if it's not the right time, what you have to go through as an individual to say no to something like that. I can't even begin to imagine that emotional process that you had to go through as a family to go through that. And I completely get what you're saying when you say like it sounds awful, like finding a child and things like that. I actually went through the initial adoption assessment process myself many years ago. I had my daughter, and I just really struggled to fall pregnant again, and I really wanted her to have siblings. And I think that I went through like the tests myself, and they were talking about secondary infertility and things like that. And I was really keen to adopt. This was with my ex-husband, so my daughter's dad. And we went through the process and went right through to kind of the panel stage. So there's a few stages, isn't there, and going through all of that. And you talking about that when they come and you talk about your childhood and things like that, I agree. It's really therapeutic. And I did feel like I'd had a session on the couch doing it. But for us, we didn't go forward with it, and subsequently we are no longer together. So in the long run, it was the right decision. But I remember thinking, we went to an adoption event where you go and you meet lots of children, and it's just kind of like a fun day event, isn't it? And I remember saying on that day, like, it feels really strange that you're kind of going to look at children, and it's a really strange and unnatural feeling, isn't it? But you're completely right. Like, that is the only way to do it. You need to make sure that a child is matched correctly with a family that is going to match their needs, to be able to give them what they need and things like that. So it's a process that has to happen. But as a human, it does feel really unnatural to go through it, doesn't it?
Well, totally. And the way that matching takes place now is very different from when we did it, because it was, 11, 12 years ago for our eldest. And at that stage, our social worker did all of the looking. So we weren't involved at all.
Right.
She would come out every kind of few weeks and say, well, I've looked at a child, but they weren't suitable. And I was like, just give me some information. I need to know. And she had actually told us a tiny, tiny snippet about our daughter. But at that stage, it was quite early on in the matching process. There were some health issues, and they were decided that she wasn't ready yet to be matched. So she had told us about her, but she would come out every few weeks and be like, nope, nothing yet. And I would be like, I need some information. Whereas now the doctors are involved a lot more, and they're involved more in looking and reading profiles. And to be honest, I don't think I could do that, because then you would want to take every single child. I don't know how you kind of rationalize saying no. At the time, it was excruciating, but I'm so pleased that that's how it happened, because I couldn't have done that, basically.
Yeah, I think it must be a really hard space to be in, to try and look more critical at, right, can I provide the care and the needs for this particular child or young person? But that emotional, I'm a very emotional emotive person, and I get attached into things so super quickly. You know, I would take everyone into my house, all the children, all the animals, all the people, like everyone, just we'll all go together. But you have to have that kind of criticality of actually what is best for that child. Can I provide it? And you know, you're not always going to be able to provide the environment and the care that child needs. But yeah, I can imagine that that's an incredibly hard thing to go through. And I think when we did it, we came out of the process just after we'd been sent the first profile. And so I remember thinking, it just, again, that unnatural feeling of I'm looking through a profile and, you know, saying yes or no, like it's a dating profile, and seeing whether this person is right. It's I don't know how else you would do a process like this though. So I think and I guess that's why the assessment stage is very focused on the parents. And I actually went and did some counselling as part of my assessment stage to make sure that I was strong enough and could you know, go through the process and things like that. So I think it's important to have that focus on the parents and make sure that they're in the best place for it, because ultimately that's going to provide the best environment for everybody. But yeah, it's an interesting process, and not for the faint-hearted, I don't think. So I'm impressed that you've put yourself through it twice. But what a beautiful journey. How old were your children when they came to live with you?
Eldest was 9 months, youngest was just short of 6 months, which is very unusual for adoption. For our youngest, the local authority wanted us to take her from hospital, basically. There's two types of adoption processes. The traditional route is the court order's made. The judge has said the child isn't safe to live at home, so they're going to be adopted. Another route is if the background of the parents is, and it breaks your heart to kind of think of it, but you're giving birth and being told your child isn't going to come home. Some birth mums accept that and are kind of realistic about where it's going to end for them in terms of being a parent. So the second route is that a child is placed with adopters from hospital, but they are actually approved as foster carers as well. So initially they're foster carers, and then when the court orders are made, they then become adopters. But for that route, there is always a chance, it might be a very small chance, but there's always a chance that birth family might turn everything around, which, you know, as a parent, as hard as it might seem, you know, that's the right decision for the child. If they can live with a birth family, that's the right thing. So there's always a risk that the child wouldn't stay with you. And we felt, because we had our eldest daughter, it wasn't right for her to say, oh, you're going to have a baby sister, but you might not. And for her to come home and then, you know, go back to her birth family. And we just couldn't cope with that for her. So that's why there was such a kind of pressure to get everything done by the October, because that was when the court hearing was going to be. And they wanted to place her more or less straight away. So we were very lucky, because court proceedings generally take anything up to kind of a year, 18 months. So children generally are older. There are exceptions to that, but the court processes, as is everything affected by COVID, and there was backlogs and all of that. So the process is taking a lot longer now. So yeah, 2 babies, which was just amazing.
Absolutely. How old was your oldest daughter when the youngest came to live with you?
4. She was.
Oh, okay.
She'd literally started school. She'd done a half term. So littlest came home the week before half term. So we started introductions, just me and my husband, and then eldest daughter met her on the weekend, and then I think she had a full week of school, and then it was half term. So it kind of worked out really well. But yeah, it was just she was old enough to understand everything, and that whole process, I said, that was quite a difficult process, because she knew about her, and it felt a lot of pressure on us to get it right and not to mess up the assessment and kind of sure that we're not perfect, because we're not, and that doesn't exist. But at the time, it was like, oh my goodness, what if they say no? We're not suitable to have a second child. And she's so excited about being an older sister. So it was a really tough time, but it was worth it.
Yeah. I guess that's another thing that you don't consider, isn't it? Is that you feel the pressure to portray this perfect family and get all the answers right and things like that. But actually, perfect doesn't exist. And we all know perfect doesn't exist. But it's someone coming into your life, assessing everything, being really judgmental and critical about everything, rightly so as well, because they're placing this child with you. But I guess, where's that boundary of where do you drop your guard enough to say, have that realistic presentation of it? I guess that has a big emotional effect on you as a family as well.
Yeah, I can remember the initial assessment. Basically, you make an initial inquiry, and then two social workers come out and have a chat and just kind of get a feel for everything. And I can remember cleaning the house to within an inch of its life. And I actually put our wine bottles in next door's recycling, just in case they looked in the recycling bin. It's like, they're not going to look in the recycling bin, but it's like, oh my goodness, if they say that we've had like a glass of wine, that'll be it. It's so, and I think most people, a bit of a generalization perhaps, but most people come to adoption because of infertility. So they've already been through, a really tough time, from experience from yourself. So you kind of, it's all or nothing at this point, and adoption is never ever a kind of a final resort or anything like that. For us, it was a very clear choice, but I wanted to be a mum, and there's something about kind of bundling up your hopes and dreams and passing them on to somebody that you don't know. We had no control over the whole process, so you feel so much more vulnerable about, oh my goodness, I have to be perfect, I have to be able to do this, have to be able to home cook and all of that, and I can't particularly. And do you know what I mean? It's that kind of pressure that you put on yourself. And our social worker was absolutely lush. She was amazing. She was, she came round after our eldest was placed. There's like statutory visits they're supposed to have, and she would come home she would come round on the way home from work just to kind of check in, kind of thing, because she was lovely. And we were very fortunate to have a social worker like that.
Yeah.
But it was never any pressure from her. I can remember kind of talking to her about, oh, this has happened. And she's like, just calm down. It's fine. You're not perfect. You're a person. You're a human. Things will happen. Because I got about 3 or 4 months after eldest had been placed, I got a speeding ticket. And I was like, to take her away, I was like, oh my goodness, they're going to take my child off me because I've got a speeding ticket. And the social worker was like, really? Really? That's not how it is. But that's the mentality that I had, and I think a lot of other adopters have, because you've been through so much to get to where you are, and you want to be a mum, you kind of feel like everything has to be perfect, and it doesn't, because it never is.
We're laughing about it, but it's very real. It is. You feel distraught, that could potentially be somebody's opportunity to say, okay, you're not fit, we're gonna remove that child. And it's funny because I am doing some research at the moment, and my PhD research, which is in home education, but one of my participants is an adopted parent, and I remember talking to her and her saying the same thing about having those worries about, oh my goodness, I'm having a bad day, so therefore I'm going to be a bad parent. This child has come to me and wants this stable home life, and I'm having an off day, and really kind of beating herself up about it. And her social worker turned around and said that child needs a real family with real emotions and real kind of being able to demonstrate how you overcome these bad days. So that child doesn't need that perfect family. They need a real family. And she said that when they said that to her, that was her kind of, she allowed herself then to be kinder to herself, to have those moments. And when you said that a moment ago, that really kind of resonated with what she said. And I think it's hard though, isn't it? Just as a a parent to biological children, and we have our off days and we feel that guilt, but having that additional pressure of somebody may have the authority to tell me that I can no longer be that parent, and it just adds another layer, doesn't it, of that worry, anxiety and stress. So I mean, what a journey to go through to provide something as wonderful as parenthood to children. So I mean, amazing that you've done it not once but twice as well with both of your children. So incredible. So we spoke in the intro about Made-A-Wish magazine, and you started it because you felt like there wasn't anything out there in terms of finding support and everything. Tell me a little bit about the magazine.
I started writing a blog when our eldest daughter came home because I couldn't find anything about what the adoption process was like and what the assessment was really like and the kind of things that come up. I mean, the agency websites give you the information, as you'll know, but it doesn't really tell you what it's about. I was in my late 30s, early 40s. My husband was kind of mid to late 40s, so I was worried that we were too old and couldn't find that out anywhere. So I wanted to share that kind of information to other people thinking about adoption. So I started it as a blog, and also to let off steam about how I was feeling and kind of all of the emotions and how difficult it was and things like that. And then when our youngest daughter came home, I'd been getting a lot of interest in my blog, and I'd got an Instagram page. And I thought, you know what, I want to be able to share more experiences, because adoptees, birth parents never really get the opportunity to share their voice. That's really what I was passionate about being able to do. So it's a resource that I wish had been available, but it gives kind of the full flavour of the whole adoption process.
Okay.
From interviews with, I feel very grateful that I've got an interview with a birth parent in there, and she's done a couple of interviews about her experience and about things like letterbox contact, which is the annual contact that she has with her daughter. Basically, she writes a letter and the daughter writes a letter back. So things like that, as adopters, is so important to know about, because we need to take that into account when we're doing contact. I think a lot of adopters, unfortunately, feel that writing a letter, why should they? Both parents did whatever it was that they did. And I think a lot of birth parents, are very much let down in the system as much as anybody else is. Okay. That's a whole different kind of conversation. But contact is so important, not just for birth parents, but it's important for our kids to see that we're keeping a relationship with their birth family, so that if they want to when they're older, they can pick that up. So it was things like that I really wanted to be able to share, because it helps us as adopters. And there's quite a few adult adoptees who've shared their experiences. And one of the articles I'm most proud of is of two girls who I think at the time were around about 10 and 12, and their mum, they were adopted, and their mum helped them to write an article for the magazine about how they felt about adoption.
Amazing.
And it was just like, oh my goodness, I was in absolute floods of tears about it. I think they were older when they were adopted, so they knew about it. They remembered being at home, in the birth home.
Wow. And
that's why I do it, to be able to share things like that, because that's how, as adopters, we can then help our children to, I suppose, come to terms is perhaps not the right word, but to understand their history and know that that's part of them. Because it is such a big thing, but you don't want it to be a massive big thing that every time they go anywhere, it's like, oh, I'm adopted. It's just part of who you are. So that's why I created the magazine, to give that information, give people the opportunity to share their voice and give support.
And I guess that's really important, isn't it? Because it's a different type of identity. Being adopted, I imagine, obviously I can't speak from personal experience, but as we grow as children and young people, we develop our identity and who we are. And I imagine, as an adopted person, formulating that identity is really challenging because you don't know your history. You may not know your history. So if there's an opportunity to have that communication and have that link back to your history and kind of nurture that development of that part of the identity, I can only imagine that would be a really positive thing to do. And I think it's really worth saying that not all birth parents have done something negative. You know, there are lots of reasons why people their children are put up for adoption, and I've heard lots of stories of people who are still very much in contact with the birth family, and there are other reasons why that just wasn't a suitable place for that child to stay. So it's not always kind of an adverse thing that child hasn't stayed with their birth family. So I think there are opportunities and there are situations where it's a really positive thing that birth families are still involved, you know, and whether that's through that letterbox contact or through other means, I think it can only be a positive thing to help that child really have that sense of belonging and that growth of their own identity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our two have dealt with, we've always told them that they're adopted from being very young, and they've dealt with it very differently. You know, everybody's different and how they deal with things. But I had a conversation with my eldest daughter a couple of weeks ago about, it just kind of came up naturally and we were talking about things. And she said, why did you tell us kind of when we were younger about being adopted? Why did you do that? Why did we need to know? And I said to her, can you imagine now at your age, if I kind of came to you and said, oh, by the way, I didn't give birth to you, somebody else did. And she was like, oh my goodness, that would be horrendous. So she totally got it. You know, and that's why if children are so young when they're adopted that they don't have any memory of their birth family, they need to know about it early on, because it just is creating, you know, a whole host of problems adding on to everything else that they have. And obviously, if they're old enough to have memories of it, then it needs to be dealt with in a different way. But I think that is the aspect of being an adoptive parent that I completely underestimated, because it can be really challenging balancing how much information to give, how much to say, because at the end of the day, you know, our kids are thinking, well, you know, why couldn't I live with my birth family? Why was that decision made? And it's trying to help them understand that without frightening them, without, you know, I want them to have a relationship with their birth family when they're old enough to make that decision themselves, because it's part of their family, it's part of their history. It's really challenging knowing how to do that. And yes, there is support available through post-adoption support, but that's not always, it certainly isn't available at kind of 9 o'clock at night, which is when she always talks about it just as she's going to bed. So you have to be able to just deal with it in the best way that you think you can. But it's absolutely crucial that adoptees know about their history as far as possible, as early as possible, because that then gives them the best chance of growing up, coming to terms with it and dealing with it.
What would you say would be kind of I know this is going to be individual to every child, but what kind of age do you think is a good age to start those conversations?
We started with our eldest when she was about 2.5, because her nursery teacher was pregnant, and it was just a really easy way of introducing it, because she was like, oh, did I grow up? Tommy, no, you didn't. And I vividly remember talking to her about it, and said, you grew in my heart, not in my belly. And I'd come in one day and she had a toy, and she was trying to shove a toy into her heart, like, because she was absolutely adored this little cuddly toy. And that's always how I've explained it. And I think if the child was a baby when they were adopted, as early as possible, because it just then is part of who they are. It isn't a big elephant in the room kind of situation. The older they are when they're adopted, they'll have a memory of it anyway. and it's about just talking about it and letting them talk through what they've experienced and why. Again, it's age related, but why it wasn't possible for them to live with their birth family. We try and keep it very, I guess the language that we choose carefully and not add anything or anything like that. Just say this is, they didn't have the skills is usually kind of how we deal with it. And then as they get older, we'll go into more detail.
It's hard, isn't it? I imagine to kind of find that line, that balance. And I guess it's important for them to make their own decisions when they're old enough, based on the information they've been given, impartial information they've been given. How much support do the children get from like the post-adoption support? Do they get any kind of ongoing? No.
Only if you ask. Going back to what we said before about trying to be perfect as an adoptive parent, it comes back to that. It's really difficult to ask for help. Post-adoption support are there, but once the adoption order is granted, that's it. Your child is yours, and it's just like as if you'd had a birth child. There's no input from social services at all, unless prior to the order being granted, support had already been set up if your child has particular needs already, and they've been identified and therapy or whatever is already in place. But from our point of view, once the adoption order was made, that's it. You don't hear anything from anybody again unless you contact them. And it can be quite a big step. I mean, we're at the stage where we are going to ask for some support. But I've been putting off ringing up for months because you don't want to kind of feel like, oh, well, can you not just manage that? It's stuff that, I don't have the skills to manage, so I need help with, we need help with. But there's a big, within the adoption community, and I see this a lot, I'm in quite a few kind of groups of adopters, where it's like, how do you ask for help without sounding like you're just not coping? And it's knowing when to do that. And I do think that is a massive flaw in the system. I totally get that, social services is stretched beyond belief, but there needs to be some kind of halfway between being constantly involved and not having any involvement at all.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a 6 monthly, is everything all right? Do you need any support? This is what we've got, kind of thing. Because it's not knowing what kind of support you can get. So no, basically once the order's made, that's it, unless you contact social services again.
Which, like, I get the whole kind of, like, you've gone through the process, they are your children. And, generally as parents, we don't have that regular check-in. I get that. But that situation is different. Those children are going to go through a different experience than, a regular family with biological children. Their experience is different. So it isn't just a case of they're your children, now you should be able to parent them, because it's a different circumstance, isn't it? And I imagine the kind of milestones and the challenges and the things you come across, and they're all going to have a different approach to it. But I guess this is why your magazine is so great, because you are providing some of that information to people, and it's coming from people that have lived experiences of it as well. So that real kind of personable approach, I think, is going to be really, really useful for people to have a look at. Have you had a lot of feedback from adopters on your magazine, and I guess prospective adopters as well, because people who are thinking about it would also benefit from looking at the information?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the people who find the magazine online, just it's through a Google search, because they're frantically typing, what on earth is adoption? How do I but I've got quite a big following on Instagram, and yes, I get a lot of feedback from people, usually prospective adopters who are just starting out, asking for particular kinds of articles, and I just send them the links. And if I don't have anything on it, then that gives me an idea of what kind of content to create as well. But it's become a resource that a lot of people kind of go to first if they're thinking about adoption, which is the whole point. That's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll put some links to everything underneath the episode so people can find it easy and have a little look around. I know I'm probably going to lose a few hours having a little search around and reading of things. But I mean, we've spoken about the kind of emotional impact that this process has on you as an individual and that kind of pressure to get it right. How do you look after yourself through the ups and downs of a process like this? Is there anything in particular that you try and prioritize to look after yourself?
I'm not very good at doing that. I'm getting better. But for me, it's going outside, going for a walk. Over the summer, what really kind of helped us all reset was just being at the beach all the time. And for me, that is
nice.
My ideal kind of just get out and the kids love being outside, so kind of win-win. But it's definitely going for walks. We're very lucky that we've got like a dean at the end of our street. So when it's been a tricky school run, I just walk through that and look at the trees and take some deep breaths. Yeah. And I love reading as well. So if I get the chance, then that's what I like to do as well.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot, don't we, about the benefits of being outdoors for children and helping them regulate and things like that. But actually, us adults, I speak to so many people, and going outside is a very common thing that people say to just kind of like regroup, take a few deep breaths. There's something about being just out in nature and just in the fresh air, isn't there, that helps you take that moment. I think it helps to kind of ground you in context, doesn't it? I think if sometimes, like if I'm sitting at my desk, because I can spend like long hours at my desk just looking at a screen on some days, and you kind of get wrapped up in this is really important. If I don't do this, then this is going to happen. And then sometimes just going out into the garden, taking that breath and looking at the context and going, actually, the world isn't going to end if I just do that tomorrow. I think it's fine.
Absolutely. The thing is, parents generally, and probably mums more than dads perhaps, we're very bad at doing that. And we all think, we have to do everything now. And actually you don't, unless somebody's arm's falling off or something like that, then that, that's quite important to deal with there and then. But most other things will wait 10 minutes while you just go and scream in the garden or whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the common myths and misconceptions that you've come across around adoption that you'd like to clear up for people?
Well, ones that we had, that you kind of, if you're in your 40s, you're too old. You're not. Because we thought we would, at the ages that we would be matched with older children. We weren't. My husband he would have been early 50s when our 6-month-old came home. That you have to own your own house. You don't. As long as you're financially secure. Again, if you're becoming a birth parent, nobody would check your finances or anything like that. But the whole point is that children have come from unstable backgrounds. They don't want to then have a bailiff on the door kind of saying, you haven't paid your rent or whatever. So financial security is important, but you don't need to own your own house. You don't need to be in a relationship. Single adopters, absolutely take my hat off to single adopters. And I've published quite a few articles from single adopters who've adopted sibling groups, which just blows my mind completely. So you don't have to be in a relationship. You don't have to be in you don't have to be in employment, as long as, again, it's financial security. You can be a same-sex couple. And I think one of the biggest things for us also was about your history. As we've talked about before, nobody's perfect. I don't have a relationship with my dad, and I thought that would be a problem. It's not. If there are things in your history, perhaps you were a bit daft when you were younger and got into trouble with the police or whatever, as long as it's not an offence related to children, if you stole some things, that isn't the end of the world. It's about how you dealt with that and how you learned from it. And quite often, from my point of view, not having a relationship with my dad means that I can perhaps understand more how difficult it is for my kids to know that they've got another parent that they don't have a relationship with. So things like that are not the end of the world. But I think the most important thing it's not a myth, but the most important thing to think about if you are thinking about adoption is honesty. Don't try and hide things that have happened in your past, because it will come back and bite you on the backside. But quite often just getting them out there and talking about them, and then you realise, actually, I learned a lot from that, or I need to learn a lot from that. I need to do this. So honesty is the key, but you don't need to be young, loads of money, in a relationship, in your own house, anything like that. As we said before, you just need to be a real person, and be able to give a real kind of childhood.
Absolutely. And I think we touched upon this earlier, but how do you think that the adoption process and support could be improved in the UK? Are there things that you think would be better if they did it slightly different?
I think post-adoption support is a massive, massive thing, and that is just not fit for parents at all. But I think perhaps more information at the start of the process about what is going to happen. One of the common things that I get from adopters is the actual court process. So when a child's been with you for 10 weeks, you can then apply for the adoption order.
Right.
But that part of the process is the bit that as adopters we don't understand. I understood it because I used to do that for my job.
Yeah.
But nobody else kind of does. And again, it's usually quite a low risk, but both parents can apply to set aside the placement order. They can oppose the adoption order. And as adopters, you don't know about that, which means that there's a period of time where you apply for the adoption order and you think, this is going to go through. We're going to be a family. That's going to be the end of it. And then you find out from your social worker that the birth parents have applied to oppose it. And in your head, it's a natural instinct to think, oh my goodness, that's it. They're going to be removed from us and they're going to go back to birth parents. The reality is that happens very, very rarely, but adopters don't know that. And when you're in that kind of panic mode, you don't understand that. So having all of that information at the beginning, I think, is a really important thing that needs to be done. And I don't think that it certainly wasn't anything that was talked about when we did our adoption assessment. And I don't think that's changed particularly now, but more open and honest information about all parts of the process and more tools to use for dealing with life story. Because it's not, those two are quite big pressure points. And if they go wrong, that could be where placements break down.
Absolutely. What advice would you give someone who was just kind of thinking about starting the adoption process?
Do lots and lots of research, read as much as you can, or listen to podcasts or whatever, but get as much information as you can and ask questions. Mainly on Instagram, there's a really good adoption community on there. Ask questions.
Okay.
Don't feel afraid to kind of say, how does this work? Or, and I always say to people, if they're asking for links and things because they're just starting, just ask. If I can't answer the question, I'll try and find out for you. But do your research and find out. I think sometimes adoption has quite a negative kind of view from people, that it's damaged children and it's awful. And yes, every single child who is adopted has experienced trauma, but that doesn't mean they're not entitled to the best childhood that they can. So from my point of view, it's, yes, it's challenging. Being a parent is challenging, however it's happened. I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's something that I quite often think about, because if we had gone down the route of IVF or whatever it was that we were going to need, and it had worked, we would never be the parent to the children that I am. And that absolutely terrifies me. So if anybody's thinking about adoption, get as much information as you can and go into it with your eyes open. And make sure that your reasons for wanting to adopt are the right reasons. It can never be a last resort. It's a choice, and a positive choice of how you want to make your family.
Absolutely. And what about friends and family around those who are thinking about it? Because I imagine they play a huge role in this as well. So what are some of the things, or how can they be supportive of the person that they know that's about to embark on it?
I suppose as you would somebody who's just told you that they're pregnant, ask how you can help. Ask to find out about the process. Is there anything that we can do to help? I can always remember my mum, bless her. I mean, she's brilliant with the kids. She's the best gran that you could imagine. But there was times at the beginning, and she said it to me, she's like, I'm worried that will I be able to love them as much as I love my sister's kids? And I can remember her saying in the early days, she was like, why on earth was I worried about that? She absolutely adores them. But it's about giving them the information and saying there are books for that are specifically designed for friends and family. Some adoption agencies now include that as part of the assessment process. So there are sessions for friends and family, which I think is a brilliant thing. And it certainly wasn't something that was available when we did it. But ask them to get involved. And I think you find then who really are your true friends and who are the ones that you can rely on. Because part of the process, you have to say who your support network is. So that's a really good time to find out from people whether they're going to be on board or not.
Absolutely. And that might be useful if we can link to some of those books that you spoke about there for friends and family underneath as well, if anybody wants to have a look at those. Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Well, we can't finish without talking about the fact that you came, I'm going to have to read this, 5th in the world in sports acrobatics. It sounds really random. What is sports acrobatics?
It's a type of gymnastics. I was in a women's group, so I was in the middle. So I balanced on somebody and then I balanced somebody on top of me, like doing one kinds of things. And then we threw the little one in the air and something per quarter. So yeah. It was in Beijing in China, which was just an amazing experience. And because I'm a redhead, you can imagine the reaction from Chinese people to like a redhead walking around. It was literally like I had some kind of infectious disease or something. It was either, oh my goodness, and I did actually have one child run off screaming because I had red hair. Because you don't, if you look in places like China, everybody's got the same colour hair. There's no difference at all. So, yeah. That's the claim to fame.
Like, what? How did you get into something like that?
My sister did gymnastics and then I wanted to do it because she did, and my dad was a coach. So it just kind of happened. And I wasn't good enough at artistic gymnastics, which is the traditional kind of floor, bars, beam and vault.
Right.
And really enjoyed the club that we were in had sports acrobatics as well. So gave it a try and just absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Do you use any of those kind of skills or disciplines now in your everyday life, do you think?
Probably not as much as I should. But certainly if I'm put my mind to doing something, then, I'll do it. And having more focus and being able to prioritise, I suppose. And it's something that I quite often talk to my daughter about because she dances. My eldest daughter, she absolutely adores dance. She's absolutely brilliant at it. And it's kind of, it's a common ground that we can talk about when she's like, I'm going to dance again. It's like, well, if you want to get to where you want to be, yes, you do have to go, even though you're tired.
Yeah, if you want to be 5th in the world, you got to knuckle down and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, what an amazing achievement. Well done. That's quite an achievement to be able to say that you did. Okay, so how can listeners connect with you or Made-A-Wish and see the kind of things that you're doing? You said you was on Instagram?
Yes, Instagram is where you can find me. It's We Made-A-Wish Adoption Magazine and it's wemadeawish.co.uk for the website. Those are the two main places you can find me.
Okay, I'll pop that underneath the episode. Thank you. So as we come to the end, I'd like to leave listeners with something uplifting. So if you could share an empowering message, whether that's for adopters, parents, or anyone considering this path, what would you like them to take away from today?
I think that parenthood can happen in lots of different ways. We grow up thinking you get pregnant, you have a family, that's the end of it. And it isn't the case at all. If you want to be a parent, there are so many different ways that you can do that, and it will happen if that's what you want to do. And for us, becoming a parent, becoming a family the way that we have has just been the best experience. Can't imagine it to be any other way. It is challenging, but being a parent is challenging. Families are made up in so many different types of ways, and that is the brilliance of our kind of society now.
Yeah, absolutely. Suzy, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to your story, and I've learned so much. And I thought I knew a little bit about the process, but I've learned so much on here, and it's been really magical listening to your story. And I'm so happy that you've got such a great resource out there for other parents as well. So I will be sharing like mad so that everyone can have a look and see if it's something they can help with. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.